It's after 1, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for participating in this special policy committee meeting of the Solid Waste Management District. Okay. All right, I'm calling the meeting to order. So we are going to follow the agenda. Introductions. Hello, everyone. Why don't we do a round robin just to introduce ourselves as we sit?
Mi Fong Chen, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office.
Greg Gusterman, Health Commissioner for Hamilton County.
County Commissioner Denise Driehaus.
Tony DePuccio, District Policy Committee.
Michelle Walt, Hamilton County Resource.
Susan Schumacher, Hamilton County Resource.
Bob Getter, Public Representative.
Karen Hurley, Citizen Representative to the Policy Committee.
Sue Magnus, and I'm the representative for the City of Cincinnati on the Policy Committee.
Roger Kapal, representative of the township on the Policy Committee.
Thank you. So we do have opening comments here. So before we get started,
Richard, how you doing today?
We're going to go.
Give me a coat. You're making me cold.
For those that are joining us virtually, if you could.
Well, I guess I'll do.
Hello, I think the audio has cut out from the Zoom meeting.
Okay, can you hear us again?
There it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll discuss those more in item number 3. But the update from the subcommittee is in full, the movement forward of the rules.
Okay.
Clarify what you just said, Bob. Okay, more clarification. The subcommittee did vote to move forward the rules to the policy committee as a recommendation from the subcommittee.
Thank you.
But not unanimous. Not unanimously, 2 to 1 vote.
And I assume everybody has that recommendation in front of them for further discussion later on? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move forward then. Tom, I've got a card for you for public comment, but you're going to be part of the presentation, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm going to hold your card. Okay? All right, we will go into, I've got speaker's cards. We have had some conversation about the length of time. Today we're going to do 3 minutes. We'll increase a little bit from the 2 that we generally have. That might become common practice for us. But anyway, today we'll go to 3 minutes. I hope our timer can accommodate that. And I'm going to call on folks in the order that I received your card. If you would like to speak, please make sure we get a card, and I will put you in the stack. All right, thank you. The first speaker is Sally Dannemiller.
Hello. I have a statement from Miami Group of the Sierra Club, and I'm going to apologize. I put the wrong chairperson on it, so Ms. Driehaus, I apologize on that.
No offense taken.
Okay. The Sierra Club Miami Group endorses the draft of the Solid Waste Management District rules as passed by the Solid Waste Rules Subcommittee at their meeting on December 2nd, 2021. We feel that these rules will better protect both the environment and human health. At that meeting, a lawyer stated that rules are usually set in place for good housekeeping, past problems, or protection. For the over 30 facilities in our district, all 3 reasons could apply. Another very good point was made that a substantial portion of western Hamilton County is not under any zoning code, thereby leaving it vulnerable to anyone who would choose to purchase land. In addition to adopting the draft rules, we would urge you to fill in the blanks in that document regarding proximity, with a distance of 5 miles. In 1988, the EPA found that all landfills eventually leak, potentially discharging waste and toxins into the groundwater system. In our District 1 site in particular, that of the Bond Road landfill, lies in a sensitive area. This area includes an important aquifer which provides water to many, the cleanest river in Ohio, the Whitewater River, and a significant nature preserve downstream of this facility, that of Oxbow, Inc. In thinking about these rules, there are several statistics to consider. According to the EPA, Ohio has the 5th largest buried trash per capita in the U.S. at 48.8 tons. Ohio ranks 4th in the nation for landfill waste acceptance. That is the most new waste per capita. In Hamilton County, Rumpke Sanitary Landfill serves as the largest in the state and one of the largest in the nation. Finally, increases of imported trash from other districts and states will add further stress to our human and natural environment. The lack of a comprehensive set of rules could spell disaster for our county. The Miami Group strongly urges the Solid Waste Policy Committee to adopt this set of draft rules 12/2/2021, for consideration by the Hamilton County Commissioners at their December meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Debbie Castens.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I have worked all my life in Hamilton County, even though I live in Dearborn County. I worked for Cincinnati Public Schools for 33 years as an intervention specialist. I am going to go off of Rocky's thing that they sent to the people around the new landfill. They wanted the proposed landfill. They said it will improve traffic safety for them, not for us. 3,000 cars use that street every day from Indiana to Hamilton County. So stop. When you go from their entrance to Lawrenceburg Road in Ohio, there are 4 of
Audio cut out.
Well, if I remember last week, Mr. Rocky said they were going to start permitting January 1st. The other thing is, they have said is landfill won't start for decades. They put that in this letter. I believe that's not true. Small, tiny site. Now, this is the one that bothers me the most. Because when they got the permit for the entrance, they originally opened 20. 40 trucks, but somebody forgot to mention the 400. That is not a small bill, 400 trucks. So, the other thing I would like to say, since I am a teacher, the Indiana school is about a mile away, if not less, from the dump. It's an elementary school with over 500 kids. Cleve School is about 2 to 3 miles away. I'll even give you 4. That would be the max. There are schools around that. They say this is a sparsely populated area. Not true. If you go down State Line Road in Indiana, there are suburb after suburb after suburb. And I am in one of those 100-home suburbs, and it is 3 miles from it. So it is not sparsely populated. And the last thing is for the elderly, like me. There is a 55-plus community that adjacent to their land downhill. These poor people are trying to move now and sell their property because of this landfill. This was supposed to be their retirement home, not garbage dump next to them. They've already have to put up with some stuff. But now, they are stuck there.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate your time's up. Thank you. Tim Mara is next.
Thank you. My name's Tim Mara. I'm here as a board member of Oxbow Inc. I did send you by email a letter dated December 3, in which I suggested a few changes regarding the list of considerations on page 9, section BC2, the subparts to that. Just very quickly, I wanted to suggest in E that you add to the aquifer the language of wellhead protection area, because landfills have the potential to impact wellhead protection areas. F, you have hunting, trapping, fishing, and recreational opportunities. Probably should add boating to that. But I think the radius should be increased to 5 miles because the odors from landfills can impact the public's desirability of coming to a park or a preserve such as Oxbow when the stench from landfills goes way beyond a half mile. H, surface waters on a nearby site, I would like to see added to that, surface waters on or near the site and downstream waters. For example, the Whitewater River is close, and it flows into the Great Miami, which flows through the Oxbow Preserve. So the preserve will be impacted by the water contamination that comes from the landfill. And in section O, compatibility with adjacent or nearby land uses. The original draft was 1/4 mile. Again, I suggest 5. I do that based on my experience as a land planner and training. Clearly, waste facilities can impact way beyond a 1/4 mile, which is just 1,000 some feet. So we need to have a greater distance to deal with things like odors and water contamination and so on. So again, I suggest 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marie, and I'm gonna let you say your own last name, Marie, because I know I won't say it correctly.
Hi, Marie Kokocius. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area. And I was here making my statement the other day, but I just want to repeat that the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area supports these regulations, proposed regulations. And I also question the advisability of having the regulated community, i.e. in this case Rumpke, make a presentation to this committee. It seems as though that just seems that it's not appropriate for them to be involved in writing the regulations that will regulate their own facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sandra Stalen.
Represent myself and residents on Lawrenceburg Road. I had a laugh last Thursday when I heard the Rumpke lawyer whining about new rules, like they should be allowed to operate with minimal regulations like they did 50 years ago. National past business practices have created climate changes and led to local and global catastrophes. The planet has decided that it's had enough carbon and greenhouse gases. Current best practices are no longer good enough. The state of Ohio has agreed we need to address 1,000 unidentified orphan oil and gas wells and maybe another 1,000 unidentified wells that are leaking methane. Then we have Rumpke, that is the largest methane emitter of any landfill in the country, and they are allowed to spew the worst of the greenhouse gases unabated. I know the EPA does not consider road usage as criteria for their permits. I would like to know if the Hamilton County road engineer has ever sat and watched traffic at the intersection of Kilby and Suspension Road. Once again, they failed to create the intersection that was needed for that site. Trucks cannot make the turn, and now you want to run how many more trucks down Suspension Bridge Road, which is a 2-lane road with either no or minimal shoulders, and Sand Run Road, another 2-lane road that is winding, curvy, uphill its entire length. Rumpke's entire new land acquisition is a watershed, pure and simple. It's a watershed. The elevation of that hillside drops nearly 400 feet into a Class A river, one of the few within hundreds of miles. It is a cleaner and healthier river than the lauded Little Miami Scenic River. Lawrenceburg Road is in the floodplain, and like every river in the area, the Whitewater is flooding more often. We don't just have rainstorms now. We have 2 to 4 inch gully washers, and hillsides and creeks have washed out on Bender Road, South country, communities are having 100-year floods every couple of years. You cannot build a landfill on a hillside, on a watershed. I couldn't find the specs on the bridge, the suspension road bridge, to see if the current usage of hundreds of loaded dump trucks a week is already compromising the integrity of the bridge. But I can tell you that many times of the day, the traffic is backed up to a stand, still trying to get on and off Suspension Bridge Road. The road itself is already not designed for the usage it already receives. When I attended school in Harrison in the late 60s, we were known as farmers and hicks. Many of the people closest to the Bond Road Rumpke fiasco are generally considered trailer trash, also known as the extremely hardworking poor. We really don't want your Hyde Park, Indian Hill, Westchester trash in our neighborhood. The West Side has had enough of our air, water, and soil being used and abused for the benefit of the rest of the county and the state.
Right on time. Thank you. Our final speaker is Carrie Davis.
Ready, set, go, right? Okay, first I want to thank Commissioner Dreehouse and Commissioner Alicia Reese for requiring a very open process that I think has afforded us a lot more personal contact than any EPA public hearing has allowed. I find the access an opportunity extraordinary for all parties, including Rumpke. I also want to thank these three people for having the courage and the patience, and Mr. Kesterman for reading the emails that I bombarded them with in order to get this issue here. I am actually I'm glad to hear from Rumpke from day one. I wanted Rumpke's input. I would have liked to have had a more intimate conversation with them. Because this is only Act 1 of a 3-act play. And Rumpke will have an opportunity when I bring up Act 3 to fully realize the benefit of these rules. These rules and my plan are not against Rumpke, they're for all of us. I sent you all an email. In that email was the last public hearing conducted by the EPA in Colerain Township in April 2019. The EPA summarized the concerns of all the residents, and I asked you all to give it a good glance over. I know the health department's office was there. And by the way, that reference to Act 3 was because you had staff that brought up in our last meeting concerns about how restrictive these rules are. And what these rules do is lay the foundation for this committee and the commissioners to do further work to bring our solid waste industry in Hamilton County into a more safer, secure future for all parties. So I want to make sure you knew that is going to be addressed. We just have to do step 1 first. But anyway, please take a gander at that. The same things you're hearing from the Whitewater residents were heard by the Colerain Township residents. And what's really noteworthy in that record is how many times the EPA says, and the very first thing they say in it is, most of these questions can't be answered by us because it's not our authority. It is the authority of, they said, the township. I would beg to differ and say it's the authority of the commissioners. The townships don't have the authority the commissioners do. And so that record, documenting over 100 residents' comments on this very issue, summarized in a formal format by the EPA, is an extraordinary record for us to take a look at on why we need these rules. I also want to say Sharon Lutz actually summed it up, the representative from OXO and Whitewater, summed it up best the other day when she said, this is about us having a voice locally. Essentially, we can't have Columbus telling us what's best for Hamilton County. These residents deserve a voice, and that is what this rule does. It gives us a voice.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh, I still shake when I talk to you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Raj is so intimidating.
All right. That is the extent of the public comment cards that I have. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. We've got public comment from someone online. you need them to raise their hands, or do you have it?
Gary Hammerly. Gary, and Kurt as well. Either, Gary, are you able to unmute on your end? It looks like you are.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Gary Hammerly. I am representing my family, my wife Amy, my son Gavin, my daughters Avery and Ashley, and my mom Mary Ann, my dogs Charlotte and Zola, and a hamster named Angel. I live in Indiana. My property borders this proposed site. The only thing that separates us and them is some honeysuckle, small trees, and an imaginary line we call the state line. I am asking you today that you do not allow this dump to happen. I am concerned for my family's health, as well as the health of those in the surrounding area. We all know that dumps release gases as materials are breaking down. Some of these gases are carbon dioxide and methane. Methane gas, as we know, is that rotten egg smell. Carbon dioxide doesn't have a smell. Exposure to these gases can produce a variety of health effects. This includes headaches, dizziness, restlessness, difficulty breathing, sweating, tiredness, increased heart rate, elevated blood pressure, coma, asphyxiation, convulsions, mood changes, slurred speech, vision problems, memory loss, nausea, vomiting, facial flushing, and headaches. In severe cases, there may be changes in breathing and heart rate, balance problems, numbness, and unconsciousness. There are studies done that show living near a dump greatly increases your chances of respiratory infections, asthma, and cancers. I have provided a map of area dumps with a 5-mile radius from them. As you can see, there are areas that are overlapping and will dramatically increase the risk of health infections to the people living in these areas. When children live in these areas, they are more at risk with 11% chance of being admitted to hospitals for respiratory problems, as for asthma, which my daughter already suffers from. Dumping sites release many other toxins from landfill sites, which contaminated water, air, and soil. A study also found that among men and women living in this exposure zone closest to these sites, elevated risks have been observed for cancers of the prostate, stomach, liver, and lungs. I am asking you to be a good neighbor to all those around this area, which includes the people in Bright, Lawrenceburg, Harrison, Bridgetown, Coleraine, New Baltimore, Cleves, as well as my family, your next door neighbor. If you allow this dump to go in, you are saying that the health of my family and my children is not important to you, and you should accept full responsibility for it. If it does go in, how much are we allowing to be dumped there? Where is it being dumped? How high will it be? Will I now have a hillside of garbage blocking the beautiful sunrise that once was? When is the dump considered full? Are they going to keep expanding it like they did in Coleraine? What are the plans in place for the area when it is considered full? In closing.
Gary, I don't know if you heard the timer, but your 3 minutes is up. Could you please summarize?
Absolutely. In closing, I would like for you to look at my family, especially my children, and ask yourself, will you sleep good at night, knowing that you are willing to let Rumpke increase my family's chance of suffering illness or death? You would not want this for yourself, your children, or any of your family members. You do not have to let this happen, and we can't afford to get it wrong. You have the power.
Thank you.
You have the power to say no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is Kurt Grossman also in the queue? Kurt? Mr. Grossman, you have the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Driehaus. I'm the Policy Committee. My name is Kurt Grossman. I'm an attorney living, paying taxes, and voting in Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I sent an email Sunday to Michelle and Susan with some suggested edits or considerations on the draft policy. I hope I don't have to read through those here. You should have those. What I want to do is reserve my time for 2 points. One is I want to make a formal objection to one party getting special time in response to the draft rules without others getting that same special time or even an opportunity to respond, reply, or rebut anything that might be said. While I appreciate that public comment is put up front to take care of all of us, so we get a chance up front rather than having to sit through a whole meeting. As we often know, one good deed doesn't always go unpunished. And that means the rest of us don't get a chance to respond to what you're going to hear from Rumpke today, and why they're the only party that gets a chance to make whatever presentation and of whatever length they choose. I think that's inappropriate. I also want to make sure that I address something that I heard in the Rules Committee the other day, and that seems to be a notion that you can't have rules when the EPA or zoning already have them. That is simply untrue under Ohio law. You can have any rules you want that supplement, add to, or override in more serious ways or more serious limitations than what the otherwise rules are provided under state law through the EPA or zoning. Because we already know some parts of this county have no zoning to override. But this is the final place. It's up to the county commissioners with whatever rules get adopted. And I do strongly encourage you to adopt these rules with the few edits that I sent to you and perhaps some of the other things you've heard today. I wish I could be there with you in person today, but my wife and I have been suffering some illness since traveling with family, and I didn't want to share that with you. I'd rather just share my thoughts this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments via Zoom?
He sent an email, so I understood based on the email.
All right. All right, seeing none, we are going to move forward then with the next part of the agenda. We are going to have a 10-minute presentation from Rumpke, and I believe we've got Bill Rumpke and Tom Tepe both here to make that presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. All right. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for carving out some time for our team to present. We appreciate the opportunity to interact with the board and address questions about our sites, as well as our concerns with the proposed rules. We also appreciate the positive relationship that we've historically had with the solid waste district since its inception. Our continued collaboration has helped the district with its recycling and education goals, and our landfills helps to ensure the district continues to have an affordable and environmentally sound disposal option for its residents and businesses, which is also required in its plan.
It might not be on, if you look on the side, there's a little, on.
Oh, there you go. No, it says it's on. It was, here, I can do it for you. Okay, next please. Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you. All right, today I'm going to talk a little bit about landfills, our municipal solid waste landfills in the area, and then our bond road site specifically before I kick it over to our legal counsel. I'll try to move quick. We were over, you get 15 minutes. So. Rumpke operates 2 municipal solid waste landfills in Hamilton County. Obviously, the Rumpke Sanitary Landfill in Colerain, which everybody's very familiar with, established in 1945 by Rumpke. Right now, we have 570 permitted acres for waste disposal, and we are permitted to receive up to 12,500 tons daily. Not what we take every day, but that is what we are permitted to take. Bond Road Landfill in Whitewater Township was established in 1965, only 20 years after Rumpke Sanitary Landfill was established, but we didn't purchase it until 1998. So it had several owners before us, and right now there are 58.9 permitted acres for waste disposal at that site. And it also is permitted to receive waste daily right now. So that's something I've been hearing about, citing a new site and all this other stuff. It's an active site. We can take waste there right now. The other thing that I heard is constant referral to the site as a dump. It is not a dump. Landfills are not dumps. Landfills are highly engineered and even more highly regulated. We operate both of our sites with the goal of 100% compliance with all of the Hamilton County, Ohio EPA, and federal EPA requirements, which includes rules and regulations right now in regards to groundwater, wastewater, surface water, air quality, and odor control. So a heavily regulated industry, and landfills are no exception to that. It's not clicking again. Yeah, I only have 9, so it shouldn't be too bad.
And I apologize, if I said 15, you can go for 15. I
only took my portion of state, I'm gonna pass it over though, so I wanna give him his time as well. All right, the landfill serve a region, contrary to some of the rumors out there, the waste at our landfills is all regional. Trash disposed at RSL, this is a pie chart of that, comes primarily from Southwest Ohio, and the portion that does not come from Southwest Ohio comes from Eastern Indiana and Northern Kentucky. But right on the border, as one of the previous gentlemen said, right on the border is Bond Road. We're obviously right in the tri-state area here. So 43.3% of the trash generated is from Hamilton County. Hamilton County does make up the largest percentage of the trash entering the landfill at RSL right now. 4.57% of the trash is generated in Northern Kentucky and Eastern Indiana, and the remainder comes from Southwest Ohio, neighboring counties, Butler County, Claremont County, Montgomery County, all the counties right around this area. Next, please. Fantastic. All right, historical trash rates, or just a blank screen with everybody's face. Okay. Landfills obviously have a bad rep, and nobody wants them in their backyard. This is not a secret to us. Yet every day, society continues to produce trash that must go somewhere. Landfills are a proven and safe technology for handling society's waste and are vital to ensuring public health. The EPA continues to call landfills the best available technology for handling waste. While we all have a goal of waste reduction and increased recycling, it's our goal as well as this board's, the fact remains that trash rates continue to grow and technology and markets do not exist to recycle all items. We do not know what the future holds for trash disposal and recycling opportunities. Like I mentioned, tonnage continues to go up for Hamilton County and the region. Even cities like Sue represents, City of Cincinnati, we have an aggressive plan for increasing our recycling in the City of Cincinnati. We've had several promotional deals and constant communication with the communities, and we're even seeing increased trash rate from the City of Cincinnati. Hamilton County's own solid waste plan also assumes that tonnage is going to increase. And to fail for that, or to fail to plan for these increases would be irresponsible. Like I said, we don't know what the future holds for trash disposal and recycling opportunities. We can only plan on what we know right now, and we encourage the solid waste district to do the same. We know approximately how much trash this region continues to produce. 10 years from now, we could be producing significantly less trash, and that would be fantastic. But based on the rates from 10 years ago, I wouldn't take that bet. Our Colerain Township landfill has at least 30 years of disposal space right now. However, in an effort to ensure continuity for the region, as well as to plan for future needs, we want to use the Bond Road landfill more effectively before then. That's the right slide? Yes, thank you. Some historical Bond Road landfill stuff here. Bond Road landfill, like I mentioned, opened in 1965. The site has been used for municipal solid waste and industrial waste the entire time. And historical records and permits confirm that no hazardous waste was permitted at that facility. Over the years, both the EPA and Hamilton County General Health District have performed various independent site assessments to potentially identify any off-site impacts, and none were discovered. Next, please. Some more Bond Road landfill facts. Like I mentioned before, Bond Road landfill is an active landfill, and we currently take a small amount of waste to the site annually. The site already has more than 7.25 million cubic yards of permitted disposal space. And the main reason that we aren't fully utilizing the site right now is because the entrance on Bond Road isn't ideal for truck traffic. As mentioned in previous meetings, we did purchase a significant amount of land around the landfill, pretty much due south of the landfill earlier this year. The land stretches from the existing landfill footprint to Sand Run Road. This purchase allowed us to address safety concern with the trucks entering and exiting the site off of Bond Road by building a new entrance off of Sand Run Road, and also to make some other needed improvements to the site. The purchase, as I mentioned previously, is not needed for us to begin disposing of trash at this site daily. We could be doing that right now, as we are permitted to do so. A little bit more about the land acquisition. In February of this year, we purchased 466 acres adjacent to the landfill, so you can kind of see pretty well here. The red area right there to the south of the blue outline is the acquisition that we did this year. The blue outline is our current boundary for the landfill, and the green is where we can take waste right now. So with the land acquisition, we submitted a permit alteration for the facility boundary change, basically just to add the red area as part of our boundary. It does not change where the waste can go, so it is considered an alteration and not a modification. And the newly acquired land has created that opportunity where we can move the access road down to Sand Run at the bottom there. Really can't see that little picture, but the access is now at the bottom, not up on the side. All right, future plans here. We've been very upfront about our future plans at the site. First of all, we're going to continue to use the Colerain Township landfill, RSL, as our main disposal site for the tri-state region. That does not change. We have all of our infrastructure at that site. In 2022, we do plan to file a permit to add to a small amount of acreage. It's that little yellow portion. That proposed expansion in PTI would be roughly 23 acres, and of those 23 acres, about 8 acres of that would be for waste disposal. As I mentioned earlier, we have 7.25 million yards of airspace right now at that site, so that expansion is mainly will be used for infrastructure. While it will provide additional disposal capacity, the primary intent is to improve the leachate and gas recovery systems. So we've brought that up a couple meetings ago. So in 2022, I said we're planning to file the permit. I did commit to this group that we will not be doing it before the beginning of the year, and we will give at least 2 weeks advance before we would file a permit for that expansion right there. And like I mentioned, that the primary goal of that is to improve the wastewater management and gas collection of the permitted landfill space. So, and when we do decide to do that, it's going to kick off a public information input period. That's going to offer the community multiple opportunities to provide public testimony and written comments and questions to us and or the Ohio EPA. So last slide, a little bit about the what that permitting timeline actually looks like. So permitting can take anywhere between 3 and 14 years, sometimes longer, to get the permit for expansion approved, fully approved. And like I mentioned before, while we don't know what the future trash disposal needs of the region look like, Rumpke is going to continue planning for those needs. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to help to dispel some of the misinformation that continues to be shared about this site and the future of this site. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our legal counsel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tom Tepe with Heating, Music, and Clecamp, and I am here representing Rumpke Cemetery Landfill. Like all of you, we've only had a few days to review the proposed rules. We appreciate that your legal counsel was able to convince the subcommittee to remove a couple of the very blatant illegalities that were contained in that, but I'm afraid we have a long way to go. There's still more work that needs to be done. The revised code is extremely clear on what must and what may be included in a plan. And when you start to consider these rules, it becomes very, very important, as you'll see. Solid waste districts are creatures of statute. You can only do what the General Assembly allows you to do, no more than that. To be clear, the passage of these rules as presented will prevent this solid waste management district from being able to plan for the safe and sanitary management of solid waste in the future. Something very important came out of the subcommittee the other day. Your own expert from the county testified that these suggested rules would prevent new landfills and transfer stations from being built or existing ones from being expanded or modified, and that other industries are not subject to those harsh rules. I ask you, do you trust your people to give you good advice? Then you need to listen to this gentleman. He was sitting right here. I believe his name is Chuck. He has grave concerns regarding the rules as they're written. It's not too long ago that Mr. Kesterman's predecessor, Commissioner Ingram, testified in previous litigation that sanitary landfills like the one in Coleraine provide an essential public service. He was very clear about that. Why would you enact any rules that would have in any way threaten an essential public service that we all must have? We all must have. Under these rules, as proposed, a landfill or transfer station cannot even upgrade its equipment or methods of operation without an arduous process and the subjective approval by the commissioners. In fact, it speaks volume that the subcommittee members decided to remove composting facilities from these same rules. I'm sure nobody has ever complained about the smell of a composting facility. Never received any calls from them, have you? However, for some mysterious reason, they were removed from these rules. I don't know, ask yourself, why? Well, it's clear. The rules are aimed to stop the landfill and any expansion there. There are many reasons why you should take pause. We've asked time and time and time again, slow down, let's do it right, let's be involved, let's come up with some rules that are workable and objective and not subject to the whims of whoever seems to hold a particular seat at the time. I talked about it the last time. The statute does not allow rules to come out of the subcommittee. Period. It doesn't. There is a policy committee, and the policy committee may utilize a technical advisory council who must be comprised of a member representing the solid waste hauling and disposal industries. Where is the technical advisory council involved in this process? To my understanding, they haven't been at all. We also believe these rules are outside the scope of the authority. The revised code, again, is clear on what solid waste districts can do and what they can't. It is clear that these rules are not governing the maintenance, protection, or use of solid waste facilities. So we have to look to what else does the statute allow you to do. It allows the county commissioners to have rules to prohibit any person, municipal corporation, township, or other political subdivision from constructing, enlarging, or modifying any solid waste facility until general plans and specifications for the proposed improvement have been submitted and vetted. That's it. Nothing more. You have no other authority. Submit general plans and specifications to see if they comply with the plan. There's no additional voluminous compliance reports and all the other stuff that's contained in here. The law doesn't allow those things. Have you ever read the rules, these proposed rules, in consideration of the limited statutory authority? Have you ever laid these rules out side by side with the district plan? I suspect you haven't because this process has been so unbelievably lightning fast. It's a little bit disturbing. But if you did, you would realize that they're outside of the scope of the solid waste management district as authorized by statute. You know, I made a comment earlier about Ohio law being very clear as to what may or may not be included in a plan. I don't see anything in the law that allows transportation plans to be considered, utility usage, wildlife and vegetative studies. Why? Because they're not within the district's purview. With all due respect, neither is hunting, fishing, building heights, or the Indiana bat. Those are covered by other places in the revised code. Many of the rules proposed are simply just land use issues that should be addressed by the locality. Whitewater Township has voted on at least 2 occasions to not enact zoning. All the while, there's been an operating landfill in its jurisdiction. Those voters have spoken. These rules are nothing more than a way to try to prevent the expansion of the Bond Hill landfill because the zoning is not in place there. They've spoken. They don't want zoning.
gonna ask you to wrap it up, if you would. Yeah?
I can't. There's a couple of things in the rules that you have to ask yourself, how are we gonna judge these? You know, how are we supposed to know what the metrics of social and environmental justice is required in this plan? What's the standard? What's the criteria? I'm not sure I know what it is either. Also, socioeconomic impacts. Which ones and whose? Why? What standard? Those are a bit problematic. We ask that you slow down, do it right, work with your counsel, work with us, work with all the other people that have a stake in this. I think that we can come up with things that are workable for everyone. We just ask that you slow down and do it correctly. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you. Okay, so we, now are gonna move into the policy committee discussion related to a recommendation that is in front of us. We do have, I understand, legal counsel on the line. I've not met legal counsel, you have. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm attorney Alvin Bauer with the law firm of Peters, Kalale, and Markakis. We have offices in Cleveland, and I primarily work out of Toledo. This is I've been a solid waste lawyer since the early 1990s. That's been the principal focus of my practice. So.
Thank you for that. So I think what I would like to do first is hear from the subcommittee members related to the recommendations, and then hear from legal counsel in response to what's in front of us, if that's all right. So am I right, Tony, that you chair the committee? So if you could go first.
I'm gonna let Bob and Sue go first.
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, on a 2-to-1 vote, we recommend the December 2nd draft rules to the policy committee. I bring forward some recommended changes to these draft rules. They do not come from the subcommittee, but come as citizens have talked to me since the last subcommittee. So the subcommittee recommends these rules as presented to the policy committee, and then I come to this meeting with a few amendments. And is this an appropriate time for me to bring these amendments to your attention?
Actually, I think I would like to wait on that and hear from the other subcommittee members.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the rules as written, I have also had a few, people reach out to me that they had some concerns about some of the language, and so we needed to get, opinions from Alvin on a couple of those changes. So, and I have not had a chance to discuss with him at all those changes. So as it was, I think that the purpose or the point of these amendments was to tighten it up a little bit and just to give a little clarity. And so as long as he's good with the changes that Bob has suggested, I think we're good to move forward.
Thank you.
Well, I was the one no vote out of the subcommittee, and I'll run through this as quickly as I can, Commissioner. We started out with, it's going to be a very deliberate approach. We were going to look and make sure there was a need. If there was a need, could the district address it? And if the district could address it, then determine how we go about developing related rules or regulations. There may be a need, but I'm not convinced that there is a need that this authority, that the district has this authority. Alvin has given us an opinion on certain topics on that. Second point is that this is, and I know I'm going to sound like I'm repeating what Rumpke said, but I did this yesterday, and hey, the process is being extremely rushed. That's one thing. Two, the source of our rules are taking it from another county and saying, we're going to start with these rules, and I haven't seen that those rules have really been tested in time in terms of their usage and their impact. I would say that over 50%, maybe up to 80% of the items that are listed in the rules and regulations
are items that are already under Ohio EPA's purview and which, I'm not a legal counsel, but I doubt that we can overrule what Ohio EPA requires, nor I doubt that we can make it more restrictive. We talked about this need to bring it down to a local level, and having been involved with other zoning throughout the county, I think that the Whitewater Township voters have spoken clearly a number of times that they do not want local zoning. Not to say they can't change their mind, it's not to say that won't come up right now, but I see these rules as stepping in and imposing basically zoning, at least for one site, in the township. And in a broader view, I find that inappropriate for the county to step in and do that in a township that's been pretty clear on it. A lot of inappropriate provisions that I don't understand them, why we would need to know what the electric usage at a facility is, and why we need to know what their financial break-even information is, is beyond me. I just don't understand that at all. I think we could come up with something that's more comprehensive, not so arbitrary, and really, you talk about traffic, noise, odors. Where I live, I have traffic problems, noise problems, air pollution problems, and geez, what are those caused by? It's caused by high school, believe it or not. But that's the nature of development, regardless of what it is. Does a high school have the same impact that a landfill does? Absolutely not. But it's the same theory. Stakeholder input, I think, has been minimal. I think much more of that is required. And I'm at a loss to know how the district, I assume it's going to be the district, is going to go about enforcing these rules and regulations, what the criteria that they need to do. If I could have approached this differently, once a need was determined that we need some rules and regulations, I would have turned it over to district staff, health department. Maybe they needed some outside consultants for them to develop the rules and regulations. And how all this is going to be funded, there supposedly is a funding mechanism where the applicant needs to pay for any reviews that need to be done, that's fine. But I think there's going to be, beyond that, there will be enforcement that needs to be done. I'm not sure where that money's coming from. There needs to be, and there's, I think there's going to be litigation because I don't see these as being very defensible. But that's another issue, and we have outside legal counsel to handle that. That's a quick summary, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I do want to thank the subcommittee members for your time and effort getting us to this point. And so, as has been discussed, we have a recommendation in front of us. I'm going to turn it over to legal counsel to walk us through this to the degree you think it's necessary, and to give us your perspective as someone that has operated in this field. I mean, we hired outside counsel because we needed some expertise here, and so we will be interested to hear what your comments are.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. So I will just, we've had a couple of interesting presentations, and so let me just talk to you about district rules generally. District rulemaking authority has been around for a long time. Before there were solid waste management districts, there were county refuse and disposal districts, and the authority for rulemaking by those districts in very much the same, almost the same identical language as they have in 34301 G2 now, existed back to frankly 1949. And so, it's been around, and so that predates Ohio EPA, we know. So things have changed a lot since then. In 1989, we switched from county refuse and disposal districts to solid waste management planning districts. That was done at a time when there was a lot of concern about, are we running out of landfill space? And so they wanted to have, and the direction by the legislature was, let's do this at the county level of government because they already have a fair amount of experience dealing with solid waste management issues. And so the switch to solid waste management districts was made, but this authority was carried over pretty much lock, stock, and barrel from how it had existed for many, many years prior to that. But because it was done now in the context of a landscape where Ohio EPA had significant responsibility for looking at technical design elements of landfills to make sure that best available technology was being met and there was sufficient protection of the environment from the facilities that were being proposed. The Solid Waste District Rulemaking Authority was adjusted to clarify that that solid waste districts, their rules cannot establish facility design standards, and also that the rules must be consistent with Ohio EPA statutes and regulations. So part of the exercise involved here when I first got involved here about 2 weeks ago was let's look at the draft rule and make sure that it's scrubbed to get rid of items that, at least in my judgment, would clearly be problematic in terms of stepping over the line for facilities design standards or contradicting or not being consistent with Ohio EPA's laws and regulations. So we've done that. But the other thing that struck me when I first got my hands on the draft rule was, well, let me just back up and tell you what I think this exercise is about and what it's not about. One thing that it's not about is that I have not approached this, and I don't think the policy committee should be approaching this either, in the context of trying to prejudge what we think might be a proposal for a facility development or a facility enlargement or modification by any particular developer. I don't care whether that's Rumpke, whether it's Republic Services, whether it's somebody that wants to do well, we've excluded compost facilities. I'll get into that in a moment, or a scrap tire facility or anything like that. We don't have a proposal in front of us to sit and try to evaluate it now and to sort out whether we think it's a good idea, a bad idea, whether it should be pursued or not pursued. In the abstract, in the absence of a specific proposal, is a wasteful exercise. It doesn't really accomplish anything useful. And if anything, I think it would have potentially negative ramifications for a future application of the rules and standards when an application and a concrete proposal is actually put forward. So that's not what this exercise is about. And I think the policy committee, in its consideration of these draft rules, should not be trying to prejudge any kind of a particular project or concept that may be floating out there or that anybody's talked about. We don't have that in front of us, okay? What this exercise is about, I think, is kind of what I think the rulemaking process is driving at least in my experience going through the Clark County litigation, which is really the only significant piece of litigation of any modern vintage that has really closely considered the district rulemaking process and the rulemaking standards. And in that case, where the court really focuses energy is, let's look at the statute. The statute focuses on not duplicating Ohio EPA's effort, not setting design standards, and not trying to override what EPA does. And so they went through the Clark County rules and they struck out the items that were duplicative of the effort that Ohio EPA engages in, which at that point was not even a completed process. Okay, EPA had not completed its review. But what the court said is, look, there's no purpose served by having a district go through and look at the same issues as EPA looks at, whether the district would agree with it or not. That's EPA's call. Okay. And I think that makes a lot of sense. That was the ruling in that case. And I think that sets the parameters on that particular issue. But when it came to, I mean, in the Clark County example, they were considering a lot of the things that were just mentioned in the prior discussions. They looked at property value impacts. They looked at traffic. They looked at odor. They looked at noise. They looked at trash. They looked at a number of things that had a particularly local flavor and a local impact. And those items were allowed to remain. Okay. And ultimately in Clark County, after they made some adjustments to the rules, that was the focus of that review. So the important thing about it is, and where we're at right now is, in my view, making sure that the district gets all of the information that it needs to fully understand the different aspects of a proposed facility creation or modification. So a big part of what went into to my suggestions for making adjustments to the plan is, let's be clear about what it is that we need informationally submitted to the district so that we have all the information we need to evaluate to determine whether there are adverse impacts in the various areas that we discuss, that are discussed in the rule, in the criteria and in the compliance report. So that's where we're at. Now, there's some comments made about having excluded compost facilities, legitimate recycling facilities we took out. I mean, at some point, at least at the subcommittee level, it was discussed at some point that might come back in. But I mean, I have to disagree with one of the comments that was made in terms of the appropriateness of having representatives from the regulated community come in and discuss their concerns about the rule. I mean, they're the ones, after all, none of the members of the public are required to submit anything to the district if there is a new facility or a modification of a facility that is proposed. It is the facility developer that has to go through and submit this information and make sure that they get everything in so that it's complete and that it can be acted upon and that they address the questions that are relevant to the review process. So I have to tell you, I mean, in my way of thinking, the idea that that solid waste facility owners and operators stand in the same position as general members of the public for purposes of commenting on a rule that regulates their industry specifically, I just don't buy it. I don't think that makes sense. I think that the committee made exactly the right decision by asking Rumpke to come in and speak more, speak in greater length as to their views of the proposed rule. Now, having said that, you know, the idea that this rule as drafted will prevent landfills or transfer stations from being built. I mean, I just disagree with that fundamentally. These rules don't prejudge an outcome. They ask for information. They have some standards regarding substantial adverse impacts on of a socioeconomic nature with respect to land use, you know, and at some point in time, if there's a proposal and the rule has to be invoked, the policy committee is going to go out and get the appropriate technical help that it needs in terms of consulting, experienced consultants who know this area that can look at these plans and specifications and then advise the committee as to whether there are substantial impacts that they need to be concerned about. And it's at that point in time that some judgments can be made as to whether a proposed project is acceptable or is problematic, and you can make that decision at that point in time. But I don't think there's anything under these rules that would cause that should cause anybody to say that there's a predetermined outcome to approve or to disapprove a facility. At least when I reviewed it, I was reviewing it with an eye to looking at, is there anything here that would automatically disqualify or automatically waive through a particular kind of project? And because the intent is not to have that, the intent is to create, the intent is to create a process for conducting a legitimate review with integrity. I mean, because the commissioners and the policy committee, they are government entities and they have a responsibility to go through this process and to treat everyone that's coming before it looking for some authorization or approval with fairness and with integrity. And so that's what's going on with this. Now, the process may be significant, may require a party to come forward to go through and put a lot of effort into it in order to go through that process. That's okay. The EPA process is not an easy one either. Local zoning can be quite a handful. Having an arduous process is not a disqualifier. There's been, and part of this is I just want to address some things to allay any anxiety or concerns that the committee may have. Geez, did we handle this correctly procedurally? Is this right? Under the statute, the process for adopting rules is very streamlined. There's really no significant formal, there's no requirement for hearings, for written comments, to conduct a hearing, to receive public comments. I mean, some things have happened here that I commend the committee for, but they're not required under the statute in order to adopt this rule. There's been some criticism thrown at the idea that, well, the technical advisory committee wasn't involved in the process. Well, when you look at the statute 3734.54, role of the technical advisory committee is very narrow, very confined. It really is to doing the involved in drafting the plan, providing some input on that, and in doing the annual review. But there's nothing in their portfolio that speaks to the issue of rulemaking. So if they're invited to participate, that's fine. But if they're not, that's okay as well. All public bodies, I shouldn't say all, but many public bodies from time to time decide that they want to set up a subcommittee to kind of divide the work to enable them to be more effective in getting the various issues done that are before them. And so whether that's an HR committee, subcommittee rather, a finance subcommittee, an audit subcommittee, or any other type of subcommittee, just to kind of divide the work so that so that the issues can be dealt with in a more efficient way, is perfectly okay. And that's just an issue for the internal management of the committee. They can make that decision themselves. The law is perfectly okay with that, and there's no problem with that here. And so I don't really view those criticisms. They don't create any anxiety in my mind about whether this process has been done with integrity and fidelity to the revised code for considering and adopting rules. So beyond that, I don't think that I really want to get into a whole lot more, except that as the committee here considers the proposed rule recommended by the subcommittee, I would just emphasize that that consideration should be done in general with respect to potential facilities in general, and not with respect to any possible proposal that we think might be coming before the committee in the future, because we're not there. There's nothing specific in front of the committee on that level right now. And the time for evaluating specific proposals will come later if the board adopts a rule, when that time comes. So I will leave it at that, Commissioner. If there's any questions, I can help tackle them, but I think that covers the landscape for now.
Thank you. Appreciate that perspective. So we all have the rules in front of us. They were emailed to all of the policy committee members. So with that, I would like to throw it open to the other members of the policy committee to ask questions. Yeah, Commissioner Kessler.
I have just one statement or comment, and potentially Rumpke may want to respond, but it's my understanding that today Rumpke plans to increase the maximum daily waste receipt, or the AMDWR, at the facility at Bond Road from 100 tons to 1,500 tons per day. I don't believe that would be considered in these rules, but I think it's worth this committee that is responsible for waste in Hamilton County to be aware of that change.
Thank you.
I don't.
Did you want to?
Do you want to share anything more on that, or is that?
Thank you. Any other committee members have any input?
Yeah, I just want to know how we will deal now with the amendments that apparently Bob and Sue have, which, I mean, I'm not aware of what those are, but how will we do that in an expedited way?
Well, we can talk about amendments. I just wanted to get to the other committee members, just to make sure everybody had an opportunity to convey their thoughts. Raj, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. I think that subcommittee come up with the rules. We heard the testimony of the Rumpke, and they play an important role for the community. And from these rules, what I see is I don't see anything discrimination against going towards the Rumpke, anything like that. It's a general thing that the rules going to move forward into deciding in the future what's the best for our community. And still they have a great opportunity to do the great job they can do, and all they have to do continue to present the plans to the subcommittee, and we go then. We have the local subcommittee, the county commission, the local people have the more authority to define what's the best for our community, for our residents who live in this area.
Thank you.
And I don't see anything going against the current operation of what they do.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll get to amendments. Hey, Albin, I'm wondering, before we go to amendments, could you, we've all reviewed the rules that are in front of us, but for the sake of those that have not possibly in the audience, can you just briefly summarize what these rules do before we talk about amendments to the rules?
Sure. So the revised code specifically allows the district to adopt a rule that requires that anyone who wants to construct, enlarge, or modify a solid waste facility to obtain approval from the Board of Commissioners of the district of their general plans and specifications before construction can commence on that project. Okay, and so the principal function of the rules package that's in front of you today is to invoke that particular authority. Okay, and so the way that we have done that in these rules is, clearly we have some definitions, because these are specific kinds of projects and there are some technical aspects. And so there's definitions to explain, what facilities it applies to and what kinds of projects, to make sure that that's clear enough. We did exclude at the subcommittee level, composting facilities and legitimate recycling facilities. That's not a permanent exclusion. It's just the committee wants to have more time to consider how these rules might apply in those kinds of situations, or whether there should be another set of rules with maybe a different kind of evaluation process for those kinds of facilities, since those facilities are typically a little bit less intensive than transfer stations and full-blown sanitary landfills or scrap tire disposal facilities, things of that nature. So after we get past the definitions, then really the rule starts to talk about, okay, what kind of information needs to be submitted to the district as part of what is referred to as the improvement plan. Okay. And so the rule goes through and discuss a number of different aspects of information that need to be submitted to the district in order to allow the board to evaluate the proposal. As part and parcel of that submission, the rule also requires that the developer submit a compliance report. And the point of that is that the compliance report will summarize from the developer's point of view why the proposed plans and specs do not result in substantial adverse impacts in the areas that are articulated in the criteria for deciding whether to approve or disapprove the plan. Okay, then the rule sets forth two principal criteria for that the board would utilize in deciding whether to approve or disapprove. One would be the adverse impacts on the district's programs and implementation of the plan and its ability to finance implementation of the plan. And then the other criteria really has to do with evaluating whether the degree and magnitude of substantial adverse impacts that the proposal would have on the local environment, on local infrastructure, on the local community, on local socioeconomic conditions. And so that is in the document. And basically, in a nutshell, Commissioner, that's kind of how that rule is lined up. There are some items at the end of it that deal with some obligations of existing solid waste facility owners and operators to provide certain kinds of data to the district on an ongoing basis. But that's really kind of the that is not as significant. The vast bulk of this rule is really related to the process for reviewing proposed creation of new facilities and modification of existing facilities.
Thank you. Yes, and just from my read, I'm going to weigh in. So, these conversations always are related to the balance here between different interests. And so when I read through the draft of the rules, my focus is on page 7, where it talks about what we're trying to accomplish here as related to any proposal to enlarge, modify, the language is here, for solid waste transport disposal facilities. And then it talks about the proposed project avoiding or mitigating adverse socioeconomic impacts, adverse environmental impacts, and adverse impacts to the health and safety of the community. They're not being addressed by OEPA, And so it seems to me that that is kind of the reason we're here even talking about this, is that we all know that EPA has certain requirements and there is a certain process to go through. This is a more local process, where public input is welcome and, relied on to help inform our decisions. And so, that's kind of, my take on the need for the rules, the reason we're doing them, and the language in the rules that are in front of us. Can I ask you one other thing before we get to the amendments? So if we were to adopt, this committee would recommend the rules to the Board of County Commissioners, and presumably they would take that up, we would take that up and render a decision there. If there were to be a need or desire to make a change to rules once they are agreed to, what is that process?
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If the board does not kick a request down to the policy committee to say, hey, we want you to consider making changes in the following areas and come up with a recommendation. I mean, that's kind of what this process has been like. But if the board doesn't have to do that, and the process literally could be as simple as this. The board passes a resolution proposing to amend the rules, and it publishes that, okay? Or actually, the board passes a resolution to amend the rules, and it publishes it in the local paper. Adopt, publish, and enforce. That's what the that's what the statute requires, Commissioner. It's really that simple.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
Appreciate that.
yeah, there's nothing in this. I'm sorry, there's nothing in the solid waste plan of the district that adds any additional procedure to what I just described. So it could be as simple as that, and then anything that you do beyond that would just be enhancements that the board would be making on its own discretion.
Okay, thank you. All right, if everybody's agreement, we're gonna move on to the amendments that have been referenced.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, and as I recognize the focal point of many of the citizens has been one single facility. My focal point has been that this affects all solid waste facilities throughout the county. So I just wanted that clarification, that this is not picking on one facility. This is rules that affect all solid waste facilities as defined at the beginning of the rules. And the subcommittee presented to the policy committee the December 2nd rules. What I present is the following amendments to the December 2nd rules, and these came to me through various different citizens. I have consulted with our attorney on these amendments, and I bring these amendments to you. And the first amendment is the landfill definition, and that is on page, let me get to the right page here.
Page 2?
It's in the definitions. Page 2. Page 2. Page 2. I wish to add, where it says limits of solid waste placement within that paragraph, I wish to add the sentence, and all areas within the property line of the facility, just for clarification.
Hey, Bob, is it along the property line, you're talking about any distance, measurable distance, 300 feet or 2,500 feet?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yes.
And this says, we're talking about 300 feet.
Yeah, it says, and areas within 300 feet radius from the limits of the solid waste placement, and all areas within the property line of the facility. And I'll back up a little bit. As we work on amendments, the process I suggest is that we ask our attorney to take these amendments, and if the policy committee accepts these amendments, and the policy committee may accept, may reject these amendments, But if the policy committee accepts these amendments, that I ask our attorney to generate a new version of this set of rules and print and distribute the new rules, and that this policy committee, before the end of this meeting, adopts the new rules contingent upon the printing of these newly adopted revised amendments. And that new version is what the commissioners are recommended to a vote on.
Could you repeat that?
That's hard for me to repeat.
No, I mean, repeat what you want to add.
Okay, what I'd like to add on sanitary landfill is the very end of that sentence, the very end of that definition, and all areas within the property line of the facility.
Give us the intent of the amendment, Bob.
The intent is to be inclusive of the definition of sanitary landfill facility by Ohio Revised Code, just to be as consistent as possible.
I would like to get legal counsel's perspective on this amendment.
Yeah, yes, I mean, in my mind, the question was raised because it is not unusual in Ohio for sanitary landfills to have other activities going on at their site that are kind of ancillary to the disposal at the working face and the activities happening in connection with the limits of waste placement. And so I think the idea here was, if we, under the existing definition, are there potentially activities that'll be going on that are incidental and ancillary to the actual disposal function that we should be paying attention to. And so because of that, what I considered was adding this language of in areas within the property line of the facility. That was something actually I suggested.
So it could be a landfill that has a compost facility on it, and so this would cover both those processes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's right. So sometimes you have facilities that are engaged in, sometimes they've got situations set up to pull off and clean up their landfill gases for, potentially energy usage. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it happens. And some of the infrastructure that goes with that can go outside of the 300-foot perimeter of the of the limits of waste placement. And so, and there's a number of things like that. You can have other retention ponds. You could have other kinds of activities going on. And just the concern here is that because we have that 300 feet, within 300 feet of the limits of waste placement, could you be kind of but potentially excluding your ability to consider the impacts of those other activities? And so we just change it because I think the focus here is the committee, the board wants to be able to consider anything relevant that's going on with the operations at that facility, whether it's within the 300 feet of the limits of waste placement or beyond. So the idea was, let's just, yeah, go ahead.
Alvin, we have a question.
Yeah, please.
So that's a couple of examples I was thinking of, is that, so if Duke Energy comes in and wants an easement through part of the landfill cannot grant that easement without first coming back to the district. Okay? If the landfill wants to have a renewable natural gas fueling operation for commercial purposes, for collection vehicles, for any vehicle that runs on that, they have to come back to the district for an approval. Bob, I'm asking you what your intent is.
Not sure.
Well, Alvin, since you suggested the amendment language, I would like to get your take on the question.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'm not a committee member, right? I'm not I'm not a commissioner either, but you know, if the question is, by, based on the example, well, if the facility owner or operator is also going to use part of that premises for, for housing and fleet maintenance of its solid waste collection, vehicles, is that something that we might want to, consider, how that is going to be, operated and maintained? You know, it's conceivable to me that the answer is yes. I mean, there's many facilities. I could think of several right now where they have the landfill facility, still within the property line, but outside of the area of 300 feet of the limits of waste placement, is, you know, whether they're conducting yard waste operations. Sometimes they're conducting, other kinds of specialized, operations. Sometimes it is sometimes they've got a waste stabilization project going on. If they're getting specialized waste streams that are coming in for disposal to the facility, things that need to be done to that waste stream before they can deposit it in the landfill working phase. So, you know, in the abstract, it's hard to answer and say, well, we need that authority specifically to be able to address this situation or that situation. I can't predict every way that a facility, that a facility is going to be presented to the district. Just the issue is that, the impression I got from the question was, would we potentially be preventing ourselves from being able to look at a situation that could be relevant because we have this limitation that's limited to 300 feet within, from the limits of waste placement. And I thought it's possible. So that's the basis for the added language.
Yeah.
Any further questions, sir?
Yes, no, I don't.
Okay. All right, how many amendments are being offered?
I've got, two in the definitions, and then I have on page 5, 7, and 9, based on citizen input, additional language, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I am just wondering procedurally if we want to do these one at a time or collectively. I think we're going to do them one at a time in case there are some that we cannot agree to. So let's take a vote as to what, are you making a motion, I should rather, to
I'm making that motion,
the
yes.
rules with the, and you've got the language in front of you.
Yes.
All right. And you, read the language one more time so that we know what we're voting on.
Yes, that I'm adding to the landfill language, at the very end of the landfill language, the phrase, and all areas within the property line of the facility.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second? I second. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No.
Opposed?
No, I'm
You
sorry,
jumped the
it's
gun.
not you.
Abstain?
I abstain.
All right. All right, Second Amendment.
The Second Amendment is under the rules definition on page 3. And this is a deletion request. And I'm asking this deletion simply, because, the line could be, confusing, misinterpreted, and I consulted with our attorney on this, and he recommended, and he can speak for himself, obviously. I'm recommending the deletion under rules, this appendix to the plan as authorized by it, which sets forth.
So what would it read without that language?
So it would,
So it will read without this language that I'm asking for deletion. Rules means the rules that have been adopted, published, and are to be enforced pursuant to the authority provided by Ohio Revised Code sections.
all right, that seems pretty straightforward.
So move.
And so I make that
There's a motion
motion.
on the floor, is there a
I
second?
second.
Second, let's have some discussion. Is anybody, concerned about this amendment? All right, let's, vote, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention.
All right, very good. All right, next amendment.
Next one, move to page 5, section 4B9, so it's under 9 on page 5. And, there is a line, that says, at the very beginning, a plan showing the proposed routes. And before proceeding, I'd like to add, and alternative routes.
Are we on item number 9, did you say?
Item 9.
All right, go
It
ahead.
says traffic and transportation plan.
Yep,
And the very first sentence, a plan showing the proposed routes, and I would like to add three words, and alternative routes.
And then read the whole sentence.
So it would be a plan showing the proposed routes and alternative routes to and from the proposed solid waste facility and so forth.
the intent is,
The intent is that any routing to and from a facility has proposed routes, but then when there's a snow emergency or a road closure or something that closes that proposed route, there is alternative routes. And so it'd be wise to include the alternative routes in this evaluation.
very good. Are you making a motion?
I make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I don't see how you can possibly, you could do it for transfers, trailers, direct haul vehicles like City of Cincinnati, but how you can do it for individual loads coming in from elsewhere, from citizens, I don't know how you can do that.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the actual, transfer, facility vehicles, the company vehicles.
Well, that's not the way this reads.
Well, I guess the question is, the plan showing the proposed routes, that language isn't there to begin with. So how does this alter?
If you read the rest of the sentence, and anticipated number and weight of transfer and direct haul vehicles utilizing the proposed solid waste facility, including identification of the routes to be used when the transfer vehicles, direct haul vehicles, rail cars, or other modes of transportation either enter. The entire sentence is referring to the company vehicles.
Okay.
It says or other modes of transportation.
Yes.
Well, that covers a pretty broad area.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain on that one.
And
Abstain as well.
2 abstentions. All right, next amendment?
Same page, number 12, and, down at the very bottom of page 12, it's control of on-site debris, and the very bottom line.
Do you mean number 12 of
Yes,
page
number
5?
12, yes.
All right,
Number 12 on page 5.
all right.
Control of on-site debris. I'll read the sentence and then I'll mention the change. A description of applicant's proposed management and control procedures to minimize the potential for debris from the, and it goes to the next page, solid waste facility. The proposed change is from, to and from the proposed solid waste facility. So it's the addition of to and. So it would be a description of applicant's proposed management and control procedures to minimize the potential for debris to and from the solid waste facility being deposited on area, streets, county, and township roads. The meaning behind this is that the vehicles may litter the roadways to and from the facility, not necessarily just from and leaving the facility.
If they're uncovered, yeah.
Yes.
All right, is that a motion, Bob?
Yes, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
I do.
We have a second discussion?
Same objection as on the previous one, is that you can't control individuals' vehicles. There's little issues on that, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, no, I actually,
fine.
I understand that concern. I'm wondering, and maybe Alvin can help us out here. So, the description of the applicant's proposed management and control procedures to minimize the potential for debris from the facility, obviously they can control. Is there common language, related to and from with the waste coming to the facility and the level of control that, solid waste manager has? Alvin?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not unusual for communities, it's common for communities to be concerned about, about litter escaping from untarped vehicles and, and other situations similar to that for vehicles as they're going to the landfill. I mean, we expect them to be full when they're traveling to the landfill, or at least have significant loads. And so we want them to be covered, and we want the trucks to be to not be leaking and to have the other protections that we want. They may not be trucks that are owner operated by the facility owner operator. And so the facility owner operator's ability to control that on the incoming loads, can be fairly limited depending upon what we're talking about. And so, but having said that, and I'm focusing on the to part, because on the from part, hey, that makes sense. And that's why we require, wheel washes and other things to be done with the vehicles as they're leaving to go back out. However, getting to the point that you're asking, in my mind, I could see it as being a fair thing to ask the facility to describe in a plan, are they going to, will they send some crew out maybe, once or twice a week, just to kind of examine the immediate surroundings, let's say within, a half mile or a mile of the facility, to make sure that is, it's just really kind of part of their upkeep of their facility, even on the immediate surroundings, given the nature of their business. That doesn't necessarily seem way out of bounds to me. And so what I hesitate to do here is to read all of these terms that are in this document in the most restrictive, harshest possible way against the facility owner and operator. I don't take these provisions in that spirit. I believe that the committee and the board of commissioners, when the time comes, are going to apply these in a reasonable way in view of all of the circumstances, the normal circumstances that affecting a facility. So I don't really look at this as saying, we want you to provide a plan as to how you're going to control litter from spreading from individual vehicles coming to the facility, including the ones that are not owned and operated by you. I don't read this provision that way, because I don't think that is a reasonable request. But I think the idea of saying, hey, we want to plan for how you're going to go out and look at the surroundings to your facility within a reasonable perimeter, once a week or a couple times a month, just to make sure that the place isn't starting to look trashy. I'm not offended by that, Commissioner.
Seems like it's more like local municipalities enforcement issue, or the jurisdiction that the vehicle traveling to, local enforcement, highway department, police department, county, probably Officer Peak will give much insight on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I will say a lot of times this particular issue regarding leakage and debris that flies out of vehicles, at least on the incoming vehicles in particular, is something that's dealt with at the health department level.
Accurate.
Yeah.
If a truck was leaking, we would go after the truck.
Okay, yeah, I guess my only question here is how much control the operator has over incoming, vehicles that are not necessarily part of their fleet. I should have been more direct, I think maybe was my question. Not to say that they don't have some obligation to go out into the community and do a cleanup. I used to own a business. I went out and around my business, it wasn't even on my property, but I cleaned it up, right? I mean, this is what I did. So is this, amendment just, asking that be part of the conversation with the district? Okay.
Yeah.
There are some operators who do proactively educate their customers to make sure that they cover their
So
limits.
That's what I see it as, yeah.
Okay, all right, I've got the clarity I need. We've got a motion second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
And we've got 2 abstentions. All right, next amendment.
And we're halfway through. So, page 7, under compliance report number 2, towards the bottom of the page, number 2, the sentence starts out, to the maximum extent practical. I wish to add the few words right after, to the maximum extent practical, as determined by the Board of Commissioners. So the sentence doesn't determine who makes that decision, to the maximum extent practical. So I wish to insert these few words, as determined by the Board of Commissioners. To the maximum extent practical, as determined by the Board of Commissioners, the proposed project avoids or mitigates adverse social economic impacts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, you're making a motion?
I make that motion.
I second.
All right, any discussion? That one seems straightforward to me.
I think that's a repeat already. If you look at the first paragraph, compliance plan, which will allow the board to determine.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree that it's repetitive, but that's why I don't see you see a problem in repetition. I don't see any problem at all. So anyways, all right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And abstain.
And we've got an abstention. Greg Custerman abstains. All right. Next amendment?
Next one's on page 9. Okay, E, under E. And I wish to add at the back end of E, and proximity to any wellhead protection area. I heard from 3 citizens on this one.
Can you read the whole thing, Bob?
Yes, it says proximity of the site to any aquifer, and I wish to add, and proximity to any wellhead protection area. And I make that motion.
All right.
I will second.
Discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And abstain.
And we
And
have
I'll abstain also on
2
that.
abstentions.
I think it's a repeat.
All right. Are we gonna talk about F?
F is my next one.
All right.
Yes. And there's 2 items on F. The first is I'd like to add to, right after fishing, hunting, trapping, or fishing, and before recreation opportunities, water recreation activities. Recreational, water recreational activities. And I believe that phrase includes boating, and I know citizens have asked for boating to be included. Water recreational activities. So it would read hunting, trapping, or fishing, and water recreational activities, and recreational opportunities. And that does sound repetitive.
It does indeed.
So,
You just need to add water in there.
so I would recommend just adding water, before recreational opportunities. So hunting, trapping, or fishing, and water recreational opportunities.
Well, I think rather you might want to say any recreational opportunities, which.
There you go.
That would exclude water.
I do accept that. Any, there we go.
All right. You're making a motion?
I make that motion.
I second.
Any discussion? I am a little concerned about doing anything on F because we have a blank.
Yes, we do have a
So let's
blank,
take these two,
and that was
together.
the next,
Let's
suggestion.
do these two together.
And many, I count 5 citizens that have recommended that we include currently available within 5 miles of the site.
All right, let's get the motion on the floor.
Okay.
Motion, is there a second?
So,
I second.
All right, I would like to get, some, legal counsel on this one related to the, mileage of the site. You are muted,
You're
Alex.
muted.
Okay, I'm
Oh, these
sorry.
attorneys,
Yeah.
they never wanna talk, do they?
All right, can you hear me now? I think, okay.
Yep.
So, there's nothing in the, there's nothing that says that there needs to be any mileage standard in here one way or the other, whether it's a half mile, a quarter mile, 5 miles. It just seems to me that, well, in the first instance here, what you're asking is you're asking for the applicant to submit a compliance report that describes the effects, within the meaning, within that standard, within that, or I should say, within that description. And so, that's a significant burden. And then, and you're gonna have, if we're going through this exercise, then you're gonna have a consultant, and then they're going to evaluate whether they agree with that or whether they see it differently. And they may actually look at some other areas that are or other issues that are within the 5 mile buffer, and I think it could involve a fair amount of work, both for the applicant and for your consultant, who's going to be looking at this and trying to provide you a summary with some recommendations as to whether they think there are effects that need to be dealt with or not. So, but in the abstract, whether it's half mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, I can't tell you I can't tell you at what point it becomes clearly unreasonable. And that, to me, that is the standard. At what point does it become unreasonable? 5 miles, 5 miles doesn't, 5 miles doesn't necessarily strike me as automatically unreasonable. But it's a fair distance away. I mean, if everybody who was trying to establish a business, cite a business, had to address all of the effects within 5 miles, that would be an awful lot of work.
Denise?
How about saying like a reasonable distance? So specifying the mileage, but a reasonable distance from the site.
Someone's gonna have to determine what reasonable is.
Right.
We don't. Be more explicit. Yes, Karen?
I was listening in to the subcommittee meeting when this came up, and what prompted the discussion was that the original document said 1/2 mile, and that there seemed to be a general sense that, oh my gosh, that's pretty close in, 1/2 mile. So that's kind of why the blank was in there. And I don't think the subcommittee itself had any recommendation.
We
They
did
were
not.
just looking for what would be reasonable.
What would be reasonable, yes, right.
And so, when I was doing research, it really varied from half mile to a full mile, what I saw around other states. So I would be comfortable with a mile.
discussion here? What do we think?
Or can you do 1 to 5 miles based on, you know, the particular project, that it may be in a sensitive zone or not a sensitive zone?
Well,
I think you-
I hadn't heard any, like, they're kinda, with the Bond Road issue, they're thinking about, you know, how close is the Whitewater River? And that's what they want assessed.
well, noting though that this is not about any specific project.
Right.
And that the compliance report shall describe the effects and impacts of the proposed project in light of the following. I do think we need to land on a reasonable, I do think 5 is excessive. So I would be happy to enter, and I think the motion's already on the table, so
I can amend the, motion.
would you be willing?
I'd be willing to amend the motion. I feel 1 mile may be too short, and I would offer 2 miles.
Can I offer one comment, although I'll pre-state that I'm going to abstain?
Yeah.
These will apply to transfer stations.
That's right,
Many of our communities are not 2 miles wide.
yes.
So if a transfer station was in the middle of that community would have to look to other communities nearby.
Yes.
Just wanted to throw that statement out.
I'm looking at like waterways, and how this impacts waterways, and I've done studies, I've done chemical studies on waterways, and I see absorption rates and such, and I think 2 miles would be a reasonable pattern of study.
Bob, could you include in your amendment 2 miles for what seems most reasonable given the type of project involved? Because I hear what Greg is saying, so not all projects are the same.
Not all projects are the same.
Commissioner Dreehouse,
Yeah.
I'm gonna abstain from this also, but it's gonna be pretty much just an arbitrary number at this point. I'll speak for myself. I don't have any basis for coming up with a number in terms of a radius to go by. And, you know, so that's my comment.
Well, and if we were to say, I'm gonna backtrack, if we were to say reasonable, Alvin, who determines reasonable?
Well, I mean,
Commissioners, yeah.
Well, look.
Does there come a point then that where the county commissioners have to define reasonable?
well, I don't know that it works very well because you're asking an applicant to submit a document to you that provides an analysis. I think you got to tell them up front how much distance. And so when I think about the proposal for 1 mile, for example, okay, I'm gonna think about a dot on a map, you know, a particular place in Hamilton County, any place, pick a place, put a dot there. And just based on the rule here, if you make the standard a mile, they've got to look at a mile in one direction, they got to look at a mile in the opposite direction, and then up and down. And so if you have a mile, you're already requiring them to look at to do an analysis that's based upon a circle that's a 2 mile diameter minimum. And if it's a bigger site, say it's a 600 acre site, so it's already starting out as a square mile, more or less. Now you're looking at a mile to the other side, a mile on the opposite side. So now you're looking at an area that's 3 miles in diameter all the way around. That's a lot of area. And I just,
Good point.
I think going beyond a mile, it concerns me that that may be too much of an imposition.
All right, and I understand the need to have some clarity, for the applicant. So was the amendment,
I can amend it to the will of the committee here.
all right.
Well, it doesn't say what the will of the committee is.
Well, let's determine that. So I think, can we all agree that reasonable is 1 mile, knowing that it's in geography really more than just 1 mile?
Really more
Right.
than 2 miles. I'd agree to 1.
All right, so you are making you're withdrawing your amendment, you're creating another amendment that says 1 mile. We're gonna fill in the blank here on item F.
I second that motion.
Thank you. So item F is going to read hunting, trapping, or fishing, and any recreational opportunities currently available with 1 mile of the site.
Correct.
All right, that is the amendment. There's been a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
And abstain.
Raj was a no, and abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. All right, next amendment.
H. And I'd like to add, at the back end of this sentence, H says surface waters on or near the site, and I wish to add, and downstream surface waters.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
So the downstream surface waters will probably could potentially be outside of that 1 mile. So that would still include it, you think?
That's a good question.
Especially if it's on a hillside and things are rolling down.
It's, in the current language, it's undefined how far down.
Okay.
Surface waters on or near the site. Near is not defined by distance. Should it be defined?
I think the intent is for those tributaries to be polluted. So if they could be polluted, then it should be near. Or
Should it be captured by the 1 mile standard? I don't think so.
You know, if you're talking about surface water pollution of nearby surface water bodies, I mean, EPA is gonna address that as part of their review.
Yeah.
So Alvin, is your advice to leave it as is and not address the downstream surface water?
At a minimum, leave it as is, and I'm not, it may be something that ultimately, may want to strike permanently at some point in the future. We don't have to cross that bridge today. I do not see the value in making this change.
Okay. Then I withdraw the amendment then.
Very good, next amendment.
The next one is O on the same page, page 9. And we come to a mileage question here. Bottom of it, it says, and existing land uses at proposed site and for 1/4 mile in all directions from the facility's property line. There's several citizens asking that 1/4 mile be expanded to 5 miles. And we have that same discussion that we had before. What should that 1/4 mile be from the policy committee's perspective? Should we be consistent with the decision prior? I would recommend 1 mile.
All right, you're making that motion?
I make that motion.
All right, second. And a second, so we're striking 1/4 mile and putting in 1 mile. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Not objections, abstentions, we've got 2 abstentions. All right,
And then page 10, U. Page 10 on U.
yeah.
And it says, impacts on aesthetics, particularly the visual sightlines from adjacent public roadways and nearby domiciles. And I would add in there, and previous use of site.
Where does that go?
And I would add that in, before domiciles, right after public roadways.
Can you read the whole sentence?
Yes. Impacts on aesthetics, particularly the visual sightlines and adjacent public roadways, and previous use of sites and nearby domiciles.
Can you give me an example of a previous use that you would consider if it's not being used?
The previous use of a site, if it's an acquired site, it could have been an industrial use site, could have been a commercial site, it could have been an apartment complex, who knows, but that might come into consideration in the review. What was on that site prior?
It seems to make sense that this previous use of site should come after domicile, so it's, and nearby domiciles and previous use of.
And previous.
Use of site, uses of site.
Previous uses of site. So Karen's suggesting that it be at the tail end of the
Yeah.
sentence.
It's nearby domicile.
So the proposed language is from adjacent public roadways, nearby domiciles, and previous uses of sites.
Yeah.
So how do you define nearby? Near, is that?
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I am still not clear on the need for this, because we're still under the compliance shall describe the effects and impacts on the proposed project in light of the following. Impacts on the aesthetics, particularly the visual sightlines from adjacent public roadways and nearby domiciles. I am not sure why we're contemplating previous use of site in this context.
It's common when you're acquiring land for a new, transfer station, a new landfill, that it would have had a prior use. It could have been parkland, could have been an industrial site of some sort, and the concern from citizens might be, was it previously a chemical waste site? Was it
brownfield that wasn't cleaned up?
Was it a brownfield that went through the brownfield cleanup system, or was it an abandoned site?
Okay. I am unconvinced, by the way, but I will feel free to discuss.
Was it a gas station where the underground tanks
Yeah, I
weren't
understand what you're
removed?
saying, but in this context, I just don't understand.
Yeah, maybe it should not be under you, maybe it should be under R, where real property values, maybe it should be attached elsewhere. Maybe that's not the right attachment.
So, but we're talking about the impacts of the proposed project. And so previous use of site related to a proposed project, I just don't see the relevance, but that's just my perspective on it.
Because I feel like focus is on.
So did we have a motion and a second?
And what's the motion, to adopt or not to adopt?
The motion is to add previous uses of site under you.
Okay. And we had a second. Any other discussion? All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain.
And 2 abstentions. All right.
I think I seconded it.
You seconded it,
And then, and then I voted, I was convinced by the discussion. I voted against it.
you are against it? So who was the second?
She was.
I was second. I seconded the motion, but then after discussion voted no.
All right.
All right, thank you. Any other amendments?
I changed my mind.
That's right.
Bob, any other amendments?
That's it. That concludes my motions.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have an amended document. So we have, is there any further discussion before we take a vote on the rules? Yes.
If I could, I'll just put out there why I'm abstaining. So first of all, I do support the county commissioners having additional rulemaking authority. However, my organization serves very much in an oversight capacity for solid waste facilities throughout the county. Furthermore, we are approved by the Ohio EPA to do this. And so for those reasons, I feel like it's inappropriate for me to weigh in on the rulemaking authority, and so I've abstained.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Anybody else? Any comment before we get?
I already ran down my list, so I'm not gonna repeat it now.
That's right.
Commissioner, thank you.
Just want to have a full airing.
I know.
Yes, I appreciate that. All right, in that case, I am going to, ask for a motion to approve of the Hamilton County Solid Waste Management District rules as amended.
I so moved.
I second it.
All right, any discussion?
I would like to say in discussion that, as a policy committee member, not as a subcommittee member, I sat in on the subcommittee meetings in order to hear the discussion. And I personally found the efforts of the subcommittee to listen to citizens and to discuss themselves to be a very good faith effort to deal with the task at hand, to come up with rules, not perfect rules, maybe only somewhat temporary rules, but nonetheless rules that spoke to real citizen concerns that have been brought to the policy committee. And so I really am really happy to vote in favor of moving these on today.
Thank you. And once again, I want to thank the subcommittee members for their work on this. I know it's a time. All right, so, we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, and
I abstain.
we have an abstention. All right, thank you. So Michelle, describe to us that, well, I actually know what the next piece of the process is, so and you tell me if I've forgotten any piece of it. So from here, this recommendation will go to the Board of County Commissioners for discussion and contemplation. We have a staff meeting tomorrow. This is on the agenda for tomorrow in anticipation of this being voted out today. The staff meeting, we will have a conversation about this, outline what the recommendation is about, provide the rules, and then we will eventually take a vote related to that. There will not be a vote tomorrow at the staff meeting. It will come at a meeting after that. So that is the expectation, just so you know.
Great.
Michelle, anything else that I?
Just that I have written down all of the changes and we'll amend them.
I did assume as much. So, so what comes before the board will be the amended version of the document. Okay, thank you. So the next item of business is upcoming policy committee meeting. Michelle?
The next meeting is January 19th here.
And Susan, I can let you know, I won't be there, I'll be out of town.
Greg is whispering in my ear something that for the benefit of the public that comes to our meetings, either whether it's virtually or not, we don't accept public comment on Tuesdays, so just to let you know that. So we will discuss it tomorrow. It's a staff meeting, it's kind of like a committee meeting, where the president has decided we don't have public comment on Tuesdays. The opportunity comment would be on a Thursday. And I expect that the voting session where we bring this up would be on a Thursday, just so you know. Don't want everybody showing up and not having an opportunity to speak. Thank you, Greg. All right, yeah.
Yeah, I just wish to thank the district staff for shepherding us through this process, and I wish to thank our attorney for his advice through this process as well, too.
Yeah, thank you. All right, is there anything further to come before the committee? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
To adjourn. Greg's gonna get that one. We have a bunch of seconds over there.